My name is Ralph Dacey. I'm a neurosurgeon, and I work here at Washington University in St. Louis.
What are some of the formative memories you have from growing up?
Well, I grew up in a Irish Catholic family in Boston, and my parents were both wonderful, very generous, loving people. And my father was he went to Boston College there, and then to Harvard Business School. And after he got out of business school, he joined the Navy in World War II. And he was a great guy, and I loved him very much. My mother was a wonderful lady, very, very good mother, and just a wonderful person to take care of 6 children. And so, she was great. When I was young, I spent a lot of time playing ice hockey as a kid, and did that a lot up and through high school. And I was involved in student government there and did the usual stuff that, young people do. My father had a manufacturing business there in Massachusetts. And when I was about 14, I started working in his factory there in the summers and, at various times. And that was a great experience for me because I really learned how to deal with all kinds of different situations and people. I think I grew a lot as a result of having that experience, and I'm very grateful to my dad for allowing that to happen.
How did you become interested in medicine?
Well, my father, as a result of his experiences in business and in the Navy, he really thought that medicine was a great career. And I think this was based on the fact that we knew a lot of people there in Boston who worked at Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School. And these people were great doctors and scientists. So it really made an impression on him and then on me. And that's how I sort of got interested in it initially, I think.
Can you tell us about your college, medical school, and onto your internship and residency experiences?
As I said, my father had a big, big influence on me. And I think that was the dominant thing that got me interested in medicine initially. But when I was in college, I clearly was interested in science and biology and things related to that. And so it seemed like a really good fit. But, I went to Harvard College in Boston, and I started there in 1966. And over the next 4 years, we went through the Vietnam War, and there was a lot of crazy stuff going on in Boston and on the campus. And there was a lot of turmoil and heated discussions about a variety of different things throughout the 4 years I was there. And so it was a little bit of a chaotic time. They canceled classes frequently, and there was people would go on strike and shut down the school. And we don't remember all that now, but it was really a big deal at that point. So in retrospect, I kind of wonder how I was able to keep focused on anything at that time, just because it was such a chaotic environment. But it was a lot of fun, and nonetheless. And I still keep up with my 4 college roommates from that time. We're all very close. One of my good friends, who was one of my roommates, is a guy named Richard Delaney. He had this idea that we should all go down to Cape Cod in the summers from Boston and work on construction. So during those summers while we were in college, we would all go down to Orleans, Massachusetts on Cape Cod. And we worked in it for a big concrete construction company. And there was a lot of building going on on the Cape at that time. And so we started, putting the forms up and doing the heavy labor work. And it was hard, but it was fun. We had a lot of fun. But we got field promotions, essentially, to driving the big concrete mixers around on those small roads in Cape Cod. So it's kind of a miracle that none of us ever got killed doing that. But we had a lot of fun down there, and of course, we raised a lot of hell at night and on the weekends, but we had a lot of fun. So college was great for me, and at the end of college, I applied to Harvard Medical School and a whole bunch of other medical schools, and I didn't get into Harvard Medical School. Maybe I had too much fun in college, but it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because that led me to go to the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. And there I met my ultimate neurosurgical mentor, Dr. Jane, there. I met my wife, Corinne, there in Charlottesville, and both of our children were born in Charlottesville. So that was a very, very good time in my life, and it was good that I ended up going there. Well, when I started medical school in 1970, I did a lot of research during the summers there on infections and other diseases of the brain. And I had a very, very stimulating time working with the great faculty there at UVA. And one of those people was Dr. John Jane. He was the chairman of the Department of Neurosurgery there at University of Virginia. And he ultimately became a world-famous, terrific leader of our specialty. And he was an extremely smart, charismatic, great man who I almost regard as kind of a second father. He had this way of making the people around him perform at a very high level. And he kept us interested, and he really was sort of like a Pied Piper in a lot of ways as far as that went. He was an excellent technical neurosurgeon, and always was striving to improve our specialty and what he was doing. And that had a big influence on all of us. And he ultimately got me to become a neurosurgeon and join his residency training program there at the University of Virginia. And there I met many, many people who would become lifelong friends. And it was just a terrific time in my life. And we were very busy. My family was young. Fortunately, Corinne put up with all the long hours and stuff. But I still remember that as being, a very intense time in my life, but very, very rewarding and one of the best parts of my life. After I graduated from medical school, I did an internship in internal medicine and a little bit of residency training in Rochester, New York, which was a very good training program. And then I came back to Charlottesville, to Virginia, to begin my neurosurgical residency. And there I was exposed to a great group of people there on the faculty there at UVA. As part of my residency, I did a lot of research on very, very small blood vessels in the brain. And that turned out to be an important thing in my career because it taught me how to compete for grants, and it led to me having a career in research in neurosurgery, where I was able to get grants from the National Institutes of Health for a long period of my career, and that was a very rewarding and important thing for me. But I learned those skills there at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. Another very important part of my residency was that we had a rotation where we went over to work as what are called registrars in the National Health Service in Plymouth, England, southwest England. And that was a great time for me and my family. My daughter, Elizabeth, was about 2 years old then, and the three of us went over there to England. It was a very interesting time. The Falklands War took place during that year. Charles married Princess Diana, and Prince William was born all during that year. It was a very eventful year there in England, and we just loved being there. And I learned so much from the English neurosurgeons because they gave us a lot of autonomy, but they were also terrific people. So that was just a wonderful part of my training. And eventually, that led to me incorporating a rotation which was similar to that for my residence subsequently at Washington University. And that rotation took place in Dublin, Ireland, and we're still doing that. It's been a very great thing for us. So that my experiences in Charlottesville led me to do that here in St. Louis.
When did you meet your wife, and how has she affected your life and your career?
Well, I met my wife, Corinne, in Charlottesville, and we were introduced to each other by a mutual friend. And we had lunch at a little sort of old soda fountain type drugstore, which was across the street from the medical school on the corner at UVA. And we, very soon started dating, and it was a few years later we were married. And she's been a wonderful wife to me. I love her very much, and she's been a great mother to our two children. She had grown up in the eastern part of Virginia on this place called the Eastern Shore, which is a very old part of the state, and she was part of a wonderful family there, and we've had a great life together. One of the best things in my life has been my family. I have two children, Elizabeth, who lives in New York with her husband John, and she has two children, one named Dacey and the other named Patrick, and they're wonderful. My son, Ralph, is here in St. Louis and works in commercial real estate, and he's a terrific guy, and I just love my children and grandchildren very much. So there have been times in my life, especially when I was younger, where the demands of training as a neurosurgeon and being an active caregiver in a big, complex trauma center like Barnes Jewish Hospital is, where that's been, you put a little bit of a strain on my ability to maintain adequate work-life balance. Fortunately, I have a wonderful wife who's helped me deal with that, and I have great children who are strong people who've developed extremely well, and I'm very, very proud of both of them. But at times, when you have to leave in the middle of the night or miss, one of your son's hockey games or something like that, it can be tough. But I think that if you invest a lot of yourself in a career like that, you actually get a great reward. And I think that has to go into the calculation of determining what an optimal work-life balance is. And overall, I think that it's been pretty satisfactory for me in my life and career.
What exactly drew you to St. Louis and BJC?
In 1987, I was working as the chief of the Division of Neurosurgery at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, and I was very happy there. It was a great place. And but as part of a national search, three very distinguished department heads at Washington University came down to visit me and talked to me about the possibility of relocating to St. Louis to become the chairman of the department here at Washington University. And they told me about the school, and I was very impressed with them. And when I subsequently visited here to St. Louis, it was clear to me that this was a terrific place with great facilities, great people, and it seemed like a terrific move for me. And so we came here in 1989. I was 41, and we really fell in love with the job and the place after we moved here. And so it's been a great 30 years here for us. We had never lived in the Midwest before. We had lived on both coasts. But as we came to learn more and more about St. Louis, we realized that it was a wonderful community full of very friendly people. And we have really enjoyed living here in the Midwest and in St. Louis because the people are so terrific.
How did you feel about taking over the department from a legend like Dr. Henry Schwartz?
Well, Dr. Schwartz was an international leader of our specialty and probably one of the most distinguished neurosurgeons in the last century. He was a very demanding, tough guy. And I think that was a result of the fact that in those days, neurosurgery was a very difficult specialty because we didn't have very good imaging, we didn't have very good technology, and it was really hard to take care of the patients. And I think it really wears on, or did wear on, the neurosurgeons in those days. He also had been a combat neurosurgeon in World War II, and he went with Patton and his armies up through Italy and into France, and he had a lot of very, very difficult things to take care of there as a neurosurgeon in World War II. So I think both of those experiences led him to be a very tough guy. But anyway, he trained more chairs or chair people of neurosurgery than any other person at that time. And I learned subsequently that despite the fact that he was a very tough guy, almost all of his trainees held him in very high regard and really thought that he had made them the people they were. So he was a wonderful person. And so to succeed Dr. Schwartz and then Dr. Goldring here as only the fourth leader of our department in the past 100 years, it was a big thing for me, and it was a little daunting at first, but I enjoyed every bit of it.
What qualities did you look for in assembling your talented team of doctors?
I've learned over the years that there are several important qualities that a neurosurgeon working in a large academic medical center like Washington University must have. First of all, they have to be people who have great credentials and great skill technically as neurosurgeons. They need to be able to teach what they do very effectively, and they need to be able to take care of patients in a really careful and caring way. They also need to be people who are interested in research, because the potential to improve, human health and drive our specialty forward is dependent on their ability to do important research. And so that was another important characteristic. And finally, I think that neurosurgeons need to be people that have high emotional intelligence. They need to be able to read people very well. A lot of the people that we're dealing with are under very stressful situations, and we need to be able to help them through those tough situations. And you have to be someone who is perceptive and compassionate to be able to do that well. So I think those are the characteristics that I would think would be most important in the faculty members and residents I've been associated with here at Washington University. One of the things that I'm most proud of in my career is the fact that I have led the Department of Neurosurgery here at Washington University for almost 30 years. During that time, I have recruited and worked with a terrific faculty, and I am so proud of what they've done because of their accomplishments and activities, they've exceeded anything that I could have ever done myself. And it's just wonderful to be part of that team, leading that team for a long time. And I'm very, very happy that that's been an important part of my life. One of the great things about being a neurosurgeon is that you get to become friends with and associate yourself with some of the smartest and most motivated people in the world. And as I look back on my life, I think that my friends in neurosurgery from the various professional organizations and other organizations that we've been associated with in what we call organized neurosurgery have been some of the most rewarding relationships that I've had. And I think that that's been an absolutely terrific aspect of my life in this specialty. In my surgical practice over the years, I've been very, very interested in taking care of patients who have diseases of the blood vessels that affect the brain, including aneurysms and arteriovenous malformations. And this stemmed from the research that I did as a resident, and it's turned out to have been a very, very rewarding part of my life to practice in that subspecialty of neurosurgery. When patients have a ruptured aneurysm or bleeding from an arteriovenous malformation, they're often very sick with real serious problems. And to be able to use technology and science and your experience to help those people is very, very rewarding. I think it's one of the most rewarding things that a person can do in his or her life. An important part of my life in the last 30 years has been being one of the department heads at Washington University School of Medicine. And that has been also an extremely rewarding thing to be involved with. My fellow department heads and the other leaders of the medical school, the hospital, and the university are incredible people. They're all involved with improving human health through research, education, and practice of excellent clinical care. And to be part of that big effort, that big team, is another facet of my life that I found to be great. And I think it may have stemmed from participating in team sports when I was much younger, but as an adult, I've enjoyed that terrifically. I think what has allowed me to sustain my motivation over many years are a few things. And the first one is that when you're a neurosurgeon, you're working with really super people, smart, hardworking, capable people as residents and fellow faculty members. And being around people like that makes you better and challenges you to improve your game yourself. And so that's been a source of great motivation for me over the years. A second thing is that being a neurosurgeon is so inherently interesting because you get to work with and touch and manipulate one of the greatest creations in the universe, the human brain. And just being able to work, with that is a amazing thing, a great responsibility, and something that is extremely rewarding and stimulating. And then lastly, what motivates neurosurgeons, I've found, is that just when you think you're doing things pretty well for your patients, you're challenged by an extremely complex situation that needs a new solution. And that is what drives us all to continue to improve our specialty and what we do for patients. And as a result, you stay continuously motivated for your whole life. And that's a great thing about being a neurosurgeon.
In your career, you've seen significant advances in your field. What would be some of those?
Well, there have been numerous advances in the field of neurosurgery over the past 40 years. I think some of the most dramatic improvements have been in the area of imaging of the brain and spinal cord and the blood vessels that go to those structures. When I first started, the CAT scanner had just been brought into use. And since then, magnetic resonance imaging and a whole bunch of other extremely important imaging techniques have allowed us to become better at knowing what's wrong with our patients before we operate on them, and that has made a huge difference. A second area of huge improvement has been in the technology of everything we do, from microscopes to devices that we can insert into arteries in the brain that cure aneurysms and treat strokes. These are things that were not possible when I started my training. And the development of all these wonderful devices, including devices to treat spinal deformity and diseases, have made a huge impact on our specialty and on the patients that we treat. A final area of improvement that I've seen in the past 40 years has been efforts that everyone has made to improve the safety of neurosurgical procedures. Many of the things that we do as part of our practice are very delicate and dealing with critical structures and very sick patients. And what's happened recently is we're able to do all of those things with a much higher degree of safety than we could before. And that has led to a lot of great improvements in patient outcomes. So I think we're very lucky to live in a time when we have improvements in safety and great devices to use to help us take care of patients. I think that one thing that we all take for granted is the great technology that we have here in this country. And we have great technology for a number of reasons. One is that our government, through the National Institutes of Health, has made it a priority to fund important research across the board in neuroscience and technology in general. And the great companies around this country that continue to improve and manufacture terrific devices and implants are something that we should all be very proud of and grateful for, because it's allowed surgeons and other physicians to improve care and get better outcomes for all of our patients.
What advances might be expected in neurosurgery by 2040?
Well, I think in the year 2040, there will have been many changes in our specialty. The first thing is that I think that there will be many more women involved in our specialty at that time. Right now, there are not as many women in our specialty as there are in some other specialties in medicine. But I think that's changing rapidly, and I think that'll have a big effect to improve what we do. I think there's going to be a further improvement in our technology. The impact of the digital revolution in device manufacture and in data management is going to have an enormous impact, and it's already having a big impact. I think in 20 years, some of the things we do will be so different that we won't recognize them with regard to the enhancement of technology. Another area that I think is going to be very important in the future is that we are going to be able to improve the neurological deficits that patients have through developing new procedures and new devices to make them better than they had been. Up until now, we've mostly been good at removing large tumors, fixing aneurysms, removing pressure from the nerves and spinal cord. But in the future, I think things are going to really change, where we're going to be able to actually reverse the problems that people have, and which we can't do as much now. And an extension of that is the fact that in the future we probably will be developing important brain-computer interfaces where computers and data science are actually integrated into our thoughts and directly connected to our brains and nerves in a way that expands our ability to do everything we do as humans. And I think that is going to be a fascinating area of development. And I think those things are going to be even more common than we expect as the technology and the science continues to evolve.
Your outside passions have been your family and golf. Would you share some of your fondest memories?
Well, I've greatly enjoyed most athletics in my life. Probably spent the most time playing golf. I have wonderful memories of playing golf with all kinds of friends around the country, and in Scotland and Ireland, and that's been a terrific thing for me. I have very distinct memories of playing some of the great golf courses in the world, and sometimes when I'm driving to work or sitting around, I think of the various great golf holes I've played, and I remember them in significant detail even now, and it's just a wonderful set of memories to have, and I enjoyed it a lot. Recently I've developed a couple of medical problems that prevent me from playing as well as I'd like to, but I still really enjoy getting out there and being with friends and beautiful surroundings, and I still love the game, so it's a lot of fun for me even now.
You've been a luminary in your field, honored in many ways. How would you like to be remembered?
Well, I've been very lucky to work with great people here in St. Louis and around the world. And I think most of the good things I've done relate to having worked with great people. I have wonderful fellow faculty members here in the department at Washington University. I'd also like to be remembered as someone who was committed to and worked hard to improve the technical performance of neurosurgery here in St. Louis and around the country, because I think that is the most important thing we do for our patients and for society more broadly. Lastly, I hope that my work as a neurosurgical educator here in an important academic department of neurosurgery at WashU is recognized in the future. It's been very rewarding for me to train over 65 residents here at our center. And I've also been involved in national educational activities at the American Board of Neurological Surgery and the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education. And that work has been something that I think has been important, and I enjoyed it a lot, and I hope people will remember me as making contributions in that area. One of the best things about being a neurosurgeon is that you get to witness terrific courage and resiliency in people who are afflicted by serious diseases. And I don't think there's anything more rewarding than to see a person who's very sick and very worried come through a serious illness and recover and get back to a normal life. It's just one of the most wonderful things that you can see. And as a neurosurgeon, you get to see that often. And it gives you great hope for yourself and people that you care about to see that kind of resiliency and grit and strength and courage in the patients that you take care of. In general, I think that I am very, very happy with the way my life has gone. I think I'm a very, very lucky person, extremely lucky. And I've been fortunate to have great friends, great family, great coworkers. In conclusion, I'd like to thank you very much for watching this video, and at the same time express my appreciation to Mr. T. Bauer, who made this project possible. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you, Dr. Ralph Dacey, for taking the time to sit down with us and elaborating on the experiences and the knowledge you have from your life and your career, especially on behalf of Washington University, Whole Street Productions, and the viewers.